What's up, Browns fans? Spencer German here, Anthony Moeglin with you. I'm in Indy. Megs is back home in Cleveland, but certainly plenty to talk about and react to from the NFL Combine this week between Andrew Berry, Tom Monken. We got players starting to sort of get their press conferences in as well, so we'll have some more on that tomorrow. But appreciate you guys coming to hang out. Make sure you head over to brownsroundtable.com with the latest news on the Cleveland Browns. You can use the QR code to the left of Meg's head there on the video. Make sure you click on that or use that to click on the link that's then provided and sent to you so that you can go to the website, join our community space, all that fun stuff. And also make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, Browns Roundtable on YouTube, where you get more content like this. Press conferences are up there from the Combine and much, much more. So, Megs, plenty to react to.
Yeah.
And I think naturally, as most Browns offseason conversations tend to go, quarterback is always pretty high on the list and on the menu in terms of things that we talk about. I'll lay this out here and you can sort of give me your thoughts. But my general consensus from what was said in Indy here the last 2 days is that I think Browns fans should pretty much be anticipating that this thing is an open competition. And anybody who's sitting here on February 25th and saying, you know, Shador's QB1 definitively, or Deshaun's QB1 definitively, or Dylan Gabriel's QB1 definitively, or somebody else's QB1 definitively. Yeah. I don't think we have that answer right now. Like, and honestly, it's the right approach to take for a team that doesn't have the quarterback identified yet. But I think we are basically in for I want to say a full repeat of 2025, but it's kind of a repeat of 2025 where, because of the circumstances, 2 years in a row, you're not drafting, you know, there's one quarterback that comes out last year that's considered like the elite guy, and he goes number one, and you're drafting two. And then this year there's one quarterback coming out that's considered the elite guy, and you're drafting six. I think because of that, I think, you know, what the free agent market is, how much money the Browns have, and maybe they could make a splash and go get Malik Willis. But I think no matter how you sort of slice this thing, no matter what your opinions are on the different quarterbacks, 2026 is going to be another year where it's guys competing for the job.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's hope you just hope that they learned from last year that you can't go in with four guys actually actively competing. You can't hardly go in with three. And, you know, kind of the conversation right as it stands, at least right now, is that it's Shador and Deshaun going to be probably duking it out. Obviously, time's going to tell on that front. But yeah, man, it's what we kind of expected. You know, really the only guy, like you mentioned, is Malik Willis. Are they going to go spend the money to do so? If it were me, I'd say yes. It's not my money though, and you know that's a risk I would take. But at some point, you just got to go with who you brought, and it's looking like it's going to be one of those two incumbents who are at least going to try to duke it out. And I thought you know. I think that's a decent way to go. You know, obviously, if that is the case, I lean more in the Shador camp. But I just want to win football games, man. I think that's all Cleveland fans want anymore is just win football games. If it's me at quarterback, if it's you at quarterback, if it's Shador or Deshaun, they just want to win ball games. And I think that's going to be the approach that Monken brings to the table.
Yeah, well, and that line, you know, you want to win football games, I think speaks to how the Browns are kind of going about this thing. Like, yeah. I don't think there's – I'm just going to say this. Like, to me, it does feel like the debate we're having over, like, Deshaun or Shador is kind of where this thing could end up going. Because and maybe it's unfair to rule Dylan out, but, again, I've said it a couple times. I think he probably gets traded or something. Like, I just don't think – I think he was a Kevin Stefanski guy. I don't know that they necessarily are going to invest in him. They have you know, multiple guys. They have a young guy now. They could draft somebody who's also a young guy. Even if you sign Malik Willis, that's another young guy. That's kind of an experiment, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of keeping him out of the equation. But no matter what, the situation is tough, Megs. Like it feels to me that you're going to sort of be left trotting out somebody that's already on this team, because if you don't get Malik Willis, are any of the other free agent names out there, like Jameis Winston? Like, you bringing in Jameis Winston to start for you? I don't think so. Like, I think he'd probably be like a veteran backup. So it's just like all thing. If you draft somebody, if it's not Fernando Mendoza, who we all pretty much assume at this point is going to the Raiders, anybody you draft after Fernando is a project. You know, it's Ty Simpson, it's Garrett Nussmeier, who I think is still has a chance to be pretty good, but like we don't know. Drew Allar's a big project. So all those things kind of thrown in and lumped together, it just kind of feels like it's a tough year for this position, and that the Browns are going to kind of be left with, all right, between the guys that we already have here and whatever veteran we sign, I guess, like who's our best option. And that I think it probably pays off the most to like start somebody like Shedeur because there's more upside there.
Mhm.
But maybe it's Deshaun because they want to try to salvage this thing one more time. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to, and that's the scary part. Is like, all right, there's certainly Shedeur showed some potential. He had a handful of nice games. Look at the Tennessee game. You think back to maybe what he did a little bit against the Raiders. Obviously those numbers were inflated, and you're like, yeah, there's something there. And then you look at some of the games that didn't go as well. When you look at the Baltimore game or the Chicago game, and there is going to be growth involved in all this. But at the end of the day, it's a 5-1 football team, and a team that wasn't very good for a number of different reasons. And we can get excited and trick ourselves into a lot of stuff. But I think the reality is that it's going to be tough, regardless of what happens. It's going to be tough with the situation. They have a quarterback. That's no surprise. But yeah, they're going to go into this thing and try to at least figure it out, ham and egg it together, and see if they can't do something special with a guy of either of those two's caliber.
Yeah, and I know you like Malik Willis as an option.
Yes.
I'm not saying they won't go pursue him. There's also only going to be so many teams that actually are in the mix for him.
Yeah, so, and that number just keeps driving up, and at some point you're like, oh my God, this isn't, you're not getting Patrick Mahomes, man. At the end of the day, I do like Malik Willis, but you got to be smart about the dollar amount that you throw in there.
Well, that's the thing too. Like I think we've talked about it. If you only can make one big move,
mm-hmm.
is it worth? I almost said a phrase that probably I shouldn't use in this situation, but if you spend all your money, or just like not all your money hypothetically, but if like the one big move you can make and spend a lot of money on is, we're gonna go get Malik Willis, who, like I said, Malik Willis is a little bit of an experiment as well.
Absolutely, it's a big risk.
Like I think he could be pretty good. I think he has kind of cleansed himself in Green Bay, and it seems like he's gotten some experience, some quality experience that's needed. But like, it's not a guarantee when a guy only has 6 starts. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that you can fully assume he's going to be your guy, and so you're not going to commit more than people are using like the Justin Fields deals, like the sort of parameters, like a 2-year deal. That's not terrible. But like if you could spend that money instead on, I don't know, a Tyler Linderbaum or a Rasheed Walker, who's a tackle that you like, maybe that makes more sense.
Definitely.
Than signing a Malik Willis, who's an experiment anyway, and then you might be looking for a quarterback next year too. So, yeah. I just kind of feel like as I talk about it more, it's like everything just leads back to the guys that are already there.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Let's play these clips here real quick. Tom Monken talked about Shedeur Sanders. He also talked about Deshaun Watson and he was kind of asked in both instances, why can this guy be the starter? Why can that guy be the starter? Here's what he had to say about it. We'll start with Shedeur.
I think what you see is elite playmaking ability. That's in him. You've seen it. We've seen it. You saw it in college. You saw it on tape last year. Sure, there's a ways to go, but what rookie isn't? I mean, what first-year player doesn't have a long way to go? So I'm excited to get started with him and all of our quarterbacks and all of our players.
I think that clip does kind of encapsulate the Shedeur Sanders situation right now.
Yeah.
We saw what we saw. Like there was moments where you're like, this guy can do some stuff, but there wasn't enough for him to be solidly quarterback 1 right now. But if he can take that leap in year 2, as Monken alluded to, and grow and develop, sure. Like he could become that guy. I think that's kind of the narrative on him right now anyway. And it sounds like that's what the Browns are kind of leaning into as well.
Yeah, it's important to always remember, that Monken and the Ravens wanted Shedeur coming out of college, and whatever happened behind closed doors happened. But this is a guy who watched him closely, who knows him really well, and has a good touch on him and a good feel on him too. So I think that's all, that all of that can, combined, he's got a good feel on what I guess Shedeur brings to the table.
Let's play the other one. And I thought this one was interesting because while all of us have kind of written off Deshaun Watson, Todd Monken very much is not.
I think any time that you have a player that at one time has exhibited the skill set at an elite level, I think you're always going to give them the benefit of the doubt that somehow we might be able to get that out of them again. And I think that's how you should look at every player. I've said that. You guys have heard me say it. I'm going to let it play out. I think it'd be completely unfair, just like it would be in any classroom setting, be it a history exam, and all the students walk in, and before they're actually given the exam, you give them a grade. Well, how would you give them a grade? Based on male, female, race, how they look, how they're dressed? I think that's unfair. Now, you're going to have some preconceived notions, obviously, because we have prior evidence, but that's up. I don't decide who plays. The players decide who plays. I've never decided who plays.
So I just listen.
He's awesome, man. He's awesome.
That version of Deshaun is gone.
Yeah.
And no matter how, like, Todd Monken can try to tell me that and sell me on that, and you can tell me it's a new system and a new offense, and it's a whole new day for Deshaun. Guys, that was 2 ruptured Achilles ago, a shoulder injury ago that needed surgery, all the off the field stuff ago. Like, that guy hasn't been there in 6 years, and the NFL game changes fast, man. Like, if you're not constantly playing, it's hard to keep up. I am just not convinced that guy's still in there. Now that, but to me, and this is just me, that feels like a guy who is saying what he needs to say because it's a guy that's on your team, and you know you can't move off of him. So it's like you're trying to show the confidence and be like, yeah, we still believe in this guy. But the other part of that quote that I thought was interesting was like, you know, he said, or no, it was a different quote. There was a different quote he had about like the quarterback stuff in general and like it being an open competition. And he had a line in there where he was basically like, you know, he doesn't mean when he says there's no open competition, he doesn't mean that in a harsh way, but that there's just not enough film over the last couple of years, one way or another, to say, boy, we have a starting quarterback yet.
Yeah.
And that's I think that sums it up well, the entire thing well. But I also think like that's how I feel about Deshaun. It's like, what evidence do we have over the last several years that he's going to be the guy he was in 2020 when he was a top 5 quarterback? None. And if it's been that long, I just think it's not coming back.
Yeah, even if you were to sit there and be like, you know, he's totally healthy and it's been 5 years since he's had a good year, you know, that's a long time ago. Then add in the 2 Achilles, add in the shoulder, add in all that stuff. You know, that's damn near impossible to come back from. But, you know, I think at the end there, and I have a question for you, just a bigger picture. But the end there, when he was saying that, you know, players, he's never decided who plays. It's the players who decide. And that always stands out to me when coach, this is an old school type coach, man. And he's going to let the play do the talking. He's not going to care who you are, where you came from, what you're about. You know, if you can win football games, you can win football games. But I'm curious, Spence, and you spent some time now, you spent the last couple of days chasing him around and talking to him and hearing him talk. But I had this thought in my head of when I was listening to this earlier, I was like, how long does it take for, you know, a new coach with the GM? We haven't had this in a while where the GM, you know, is selecting. GM we're used to is selecting new coach. And we know Kevin and Andrew were on the same wavelength in terms of they all said nothing. They just opened their mouth and talked and pretty much nothing came out. But it feels like Todd's totally different than that. And he's like trying to learn this new style. Like, feels like he just wants to get in front of that microphone and tell the truth and be like, yeah, I want this guy to play or that guy to play. But he's like, no, wait a second. I'm working for a new boss now. And now I have to be very measured in what I say. Not that he would ever, you know, hold back on anything, but I always find it curious, or I'm finding it curious. Like, hey, he's got to approach this a little bit differently than maybe what he wants to, because as we're learning Todd Monken, this guy wants to be an open book, man. And he wants to just tell you everything that's going on. At least that's what I'm picking up. Let me unmute you. Hey, unmute yourself.
I got you. I appreciate the fact that he is a little more forward in terms of like sharing things and saying things for sure. And it's not that I listen, I don't know. I think that's a breath of fresh air for sure. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot of that throughout the course of the quarterback competition. Ultimately, like all this points to is you said it best. Like the line that he dropped today, I don't decide, they decide. That's how he's going to handle the quarterback position.
Yeah.
It's going to be throw them all out there. Let's see what they do, and we'll go from there. And I will say this: unless they sign Malik Willis, if they do it, if they go out and they sign Malik Willis, the top consensus free agent quarterback, and they spend the money on him like that, that to me is a move that's like, this is the guy that we're planning on starting. If they do anything else though, sign anybody else. Maybe if they trade it for somebody, but I kind of don't really have an appetite for them to trade for somebody. But if they do anything else, draft a guy, sign some backup, journeyman, whatever. I think that just kind of leads you back to the guys that are already here, and it's an open competition. But if it's Malik Willis, but I think that's what's interesting too is like it doesn't feel like they're pressing, like they're not like, oh, we need to add a quarterback right now and find our guy. But Todd Monken understands what the gig is, right? Like he's got to win football games, he's got to score points. If they think they need if they think this year they want a better quarterback and they find one out there, they're going to add that person.
Yeah. There's no question about it, and I'm curious to see how it continues to go. But you're right. I think that's a good observation of, they are not pressing. I do get that sense. I get that vibe of like, they're not overly, not concerned is the wrong word, but they're not going to go and do something irrational to solve this problem. They're going to try to figure it out, man. Which I think is all you can hope for at this point.
Couple other things we want to get to from Combine Week, including, well, I guess I got to figure out where we want to go next. Oh, let's go to the free agency piece because Andrew Berry mentioned on Tuesday, in relation to their cap space and all that. Well, we'll play the clip because I thought this was interesting. Last year they made a lot of moves in the margins, but we've talked about maybe trying to make at least one big splash this offseason. Barry's clip here on how they're going to handle free agency this year, how it could look this year, and the timeline on how they'll handle free agency in the future, I think is interesting stuff.
I would anticipate that there's at least the chance that we would be a little bit more aggressive more aggressive than last year. But it'll be targeted and opportunistic. I think, realistically, we may be one more offseason away from being like hyper aggressive in that window. But if there's something that fits us, fits our roster, fits our timeline, then it's certainly a swing we'll take.
Yeah, I think that's really important info. And Barry doesn't really say a lot anyway.
Yeah.
But to get a sense of where that to me was like a look inside the organization's head.
Yes.
In terms of, we know our cap situation. Barry's always going to say it's fine, and they always find ways to make money work. They're gonna take most of Deshaun's base salary and turn it into a signing bonus and have upwards of $50 million to work with this offseason. Some of that has to go to the draft, but like we know that they are kind of strapped in terms of what they can do. They're not going to be the Patriots from last year and just go out and spend on everybody and spend like drunken sailors, but they are going to probably add a piece or two that are more notable, and you feel like, okay, these are pieces that can maybe be part of the future, and then they'll do some stuff in the margins like they did last year. But to hear him say, more aggressive this year, but next year is really the year where we could start taking off and doing more things and feel like we have more flexibility. I think that's important context to know how this organization's kind of treating it. And it does kind of set the stage for this season's going to probably be another like, all right, let's just kind of grip and bear it and then get to 2027. Yeah. But I think fans kind of already knew that going in.
Yeah. Well, and you have the opportunity, to be excited. What you can be excited about is, all right, he flipped the Browns flipped their defense last year and made it, got it way younger, still very good, got some studs on that side of the ball, had a decent draft on the offensive side. You solve a couple pieces and you start to, you get a Carnell Tate if he drops to 6, or a Jordan Tyson or whomever. You get somebody exciting, or you figure out your tackle situation in this draft, and then maybe you get a piece in free agency, maybe not the best one, maybe a second tier level guy, and then that next year, like, they're going to put the pedal down and go get the pieces that take you over the top, those top tier guys on either side of the ball that go and do it and turn this thing into a winner. So like, Germ, to me, that tells me like, all right, we can build a little foundation here this year. You're not going to be looking at, they definitely don't want to be at the top of the draft again next year. You get, you put together a nice season. have a couple more wins on that schedule, and then you position yourself that, all right, we can get some more depth pieces in the draft, and then we're going to really put it down in free agency. That's something I think you can get excited about. And like, to me, that hearing him say that was like the most truth he's ever told about, like, we've never heard him talk cap. We've never heard him talk, and actually tell the truth about that type of stuff. But him saying that, I was like, oh yeah, like, let's go. Like, that's exciting. That's awesome. That should be something that, I think fans can try to latch onto and be like, okay, there's something to at least look forward to here over the next season, where we're not looking at another season of just of gloom and doom. We are looking at a year where we can actually start to build upon a foundation that we're starting to form here.
Well, and as you talked about adding a piece or two or whatever, I also think what's important for people to keep in mind is the pieces they're going to add. And Barry talked about this a little bit. Like, they're not going to go sign the 30-year-old wide receiver or whatever that's going to like put them over the top, because they're not in that position. That, like, they're not in a spot where it's like one or two moves maybe gets the job done, gets you to be whatever. No, like, the moves they make, which again, I know I keep beating the dead horse on Tyler Linderbaum, are going to be of that ilk where it's like, hey, we got a guy who's 25 years old on the free agent market, chance to make him sort of a foundation of our offensive line. Those are the types of moves. I'm not saying they're going to 100% sign him. I think they should, but those are the types of moves that they're going to make because they're trying to still build right now. They're not in this space where, like, we can just get one more guy and then feel like we're a Super Bowl contender.
We should put it on the ticker, because you should never forget him saying that we're going to be the youngest roster. Cleveland's going to have one of the youngest rosters in football next year, which goes to show you, like, all right, you're going to, they lose, you're going to lose Wyatt Teller. You're going to lose David Njoku. You're going to lose other big pieces that have been around for a long time. And they're going to try to flip this thing and make it a youth movement. And honestly, man, that's something I think a lot of fans should and can get excited about, because you're going to see a lot of youth out there running around with guys who you can get excited about, you can learn about, who are going to continue to grow up here. But like you said, a guy like Linderbaum is a perfect example of someone they'll go get, invest a little bit more in, and try to make him a cornerstone piece of this future, which, man, I don't know. I get the sense that that's a good thing. That's all good things from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all well said. And again, gives some insight into where this team is kind of looking as free agency approaches here in a couple weeks, and then draft, obviously, shortly after that in April. The other thing that I want to get to specific to Barry, actually, I guess let me play this one first. I'll do this one because he talked about the quarterback situation and adding one. We'll just play this one real quick. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but basically he was asked, like, why do you feel like you can add one every year?
I don't see a problem with that. It's the most important position. We wouldn't talk about it any differently if we were drafting an O lineman or a D lineman or something along those lines. I don't think that you can invest in it enough.
Just more context to why, I think this room is not destined to stay the same, but what that looks like remains to be seen. And, he very much subscribes to the idea that, like, you can always add quarterbacks if you don't have one. It's more of a mission that they don't feel like they necessarily have one right now. And that's why I'm telling people, like, keep an open mind to what this thing could look like. Don't just write in pen who the starter is going to be, because there's still a lot that has to happen here. The other Barry clip that I wanted to play, and I know this is an age-old debate that's going on in Cleveland right now over drafting best player available versus need. And a lot of this stems from the possibilities of, like, hey, if you're there at 6 and Arvell Reese falls to you, or if you're there at 6 and Caleb Downs falls to you, how do you not take that guy over, like, a lineman that maybe isn't graded as highly just because you need a lineman? And I thought Barry gave kind of the answer you would expect, but here's what he says.
I think you've heard me say over the years that the draft, it's really for, like, highest sustainable impact. And that's not to say that need or positional value doesn't have some role in that, but at the same time, it's not like you're just going to match your picks to the best of whatever. I mean, I think about a year ago at this time, I wouldn't have guessed that the draft would have played out positionally the way that it did in 2025. And you have to be flexible, you have to be adaptable in terms of where the player pool and where the talent pool is. I think the good thing about this coaching staff, really in all three phases, is they are very adaptable to using your best player. So you have to be open to the fact that it may not look exactly the way that you'd envision it or that you'd hope that it would look coming out of it.
Yeah, the line about the highest sustainable impact. which, you can kind of take that both ways. Like that could be, hey, we have a need, and if we draft this guy, we think he's going to fill that need for years to come. But I think more so that does allude to the idea of like best player available is kind of the philosophy. And look, I want to be clear. Like I'm never going to fault the team for trying to build a team that way, because that is how you do it. You draft the best player and know we got a great player, we'll make it work. But this is just a weird year for me, man, where it's like your needs on offense are so vast and your needs on defense are so minimal that it's just like, how do you not address here's what I keep saying. At what point, if not now, are you going to use premium picks on the offensive side of the football? Because Barry hasn't done that a lot during his time here. So at what point is that going to happen? And that's the question that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I subscribe to the I don't know, my approach to this, and this is as middle of the road, middle of fence as you can get, but just I think you draft the best player available at your positions of need, right? If you need a safety and Caleb Downs falls to you, great, boom, take him. If you need a pass rusher and Arvell Reese is there, boom, take him. I don't think the Browns are in that side are in that ilk. I think if you identify that Carnell Tate's the best wide receiver available and he's there, you take him. But if you think Spencer Fanu is the best tackle and he's there at 6 and you want him, boom, go take. Like I think you can't be willy-nilly. You can't just be with where the Browns are at. You can't just like close your eyes and throw the dart at the board. Now, what I will say is this. Teams that are in a better position to win, right, go back 5 spots. The Kansas City Chiefs have the 9th pick in the NFL draft because their quarterback got hurt midway through the season. That team, if Caleb Downs falls to him, you take him. If Carnell Tate falls to him, you take. Like they can legitimately take the best player available, and that becomes a better roster. I think that approach, if you were to cut the draft at pick 20, I think picks 20 through 32 can take the best players available. Picks 1 through 19 have to be very selective in who they're getting because you have real needs. And that's just the approach I take, whether it's right or it's wrong, is not what I'm saying here, but that's how I would approach it. And I think that, the sustainable value thing that Andrew said, it's kind of in that frame of mind that you have to pick somebody that's going to make plays for you where you need them to make plays, because it's great. You take Caleb Downs next year, awesome. You're going to be losing 24-8 and he's going to have 10 tackles and he's going to look really good on the back end, but it's not going to matter because you're going to be getting beat because you can't score points. I think that would be my approach.
And this is all reason why I feel like it's probably just best to trade back. Well,
that's the other thing, Spencer.
Because if you trade back, like maybe one of those linemen is there and it's a better value at that point.
Well, imagine this one. Caleb Downs is there at 6. You call Jerry Jones. You get pick 12. You get pick 20. And then you have pick 12, 20, and 24. You're like, yeah, you can change an offense very, very quickly with 3 picks in the first round. Like that can be how you do that. And guess what? You keep a guy like Caleb Downs or, Arvell Reese, whomever, out of the AFC North, which the Cincinnati Bengals are looming there at pick number 10. And you're like, all right, we can paratroop somebody in to kind of help us out there. But I kind of align with you on that one. Like if it's not for me, I'm writing down on the piece of paper like draft day, Carnell Tate or trade back. Like that's what I'm doing. Maybe it's because we're from Ohio, whatever. But yeah, that would be. We're kind of seeing it the same way, Spence.
Yeah. And honestly, like doing something like that and acquiring more picks is never a bad thing either, whether it's multiple picks this year.
But you also have to like continue. You have to like do it at some point. Like at some point, it's like, all right, you're keep acquiring picks and doing all that stuff. You got to cash them in, I would love, if you can call Jerry and get that to get him to come up to 6, like that would be the one that'd be awesome. Be like, all right, boom, let's go. Let's flip this thing around. Let's get 2 tackles and a playmaker, and you feel really good about where you're at. But I guess time's going to tell here.
Yeah, as well said. Time will tell, and it certainly feels like. But no, I think getting multiple picks. You're right. You got to use them at some point. But even if it's a pick next year, and you sort of kick that quarterback can down the road, if you're thinking about that.
Wow, that's a good point. And yet next year's draft too, Spence, is going to have 6 or 7 quarterbacks in it that are going to be first round talents.
Yeah.
And that could be part of the conversation as well.
Well, and speaking of using like multiple picks on certain positions and things you need and whatever, we know line is a big one. And Andrew Barry was asked about if there's a number of rookies that you sort of like would give you pause if they were starting. And he sort of laughed and said, not really, because, if they're – well, actually, this was funny because he said if it's Penei Sewell and Tristan Wirfs and Tyler Linderbaum as rookies, like I'm not mad about it if those are the guys we get. Like if it's the right players, fine. Which was, by the way, one of 2 references of the name Tyler Linderbaum during the presser. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then today, Todd Monken was asked a similar question and basically said, like, well, how many are we talking here? And somebody was like, maybe like 2. And he was like, yeah, no, I mean, if they're the right, if they're good players, like I'm fine. Like, so they both kind of had similar answers. But I think that does pave the way to they're going to draft, I think, multiple offensive linemen. They're probably going to draft multiple wide receivers, I would think.
Yeah.
But I almost wonder if because and this is a good segue for a show tomorrow where we'll talk more like prospects and things and what guys are saying and who we like. But I almost wonder if it makes sense to, whether it's the 2 picks you have in the first round now, whether you had a different pick, whether you trade back, whatever. Like, what if you prioritized offensive line in the first round? Because that group, I think, has some guys at the top that you feel pretty good about. It's kind of top heavy in that way. And then after, Caden Proctor and Monroe Freeling, it kind of falls off a little bit. Like, do you get those guys early and then get a wide receiver because the wide receiver class is deeper? So there's some different strategies that we can deploy. We can talk through those things more. I'm looking forward to that. But, understanding that you might have that you're comfortable having a couple young guys, because frankly, like, you got to get young at that you got to start. And with the way I asked Andrew a question about this, the idea that linemen nowadays from college aren't quite as far along developmentally to play at the NFL level, you're better off getting like multiple young tackles this year. You're going to probably need more. Like building an offensive line is a year by year thing. But like, if you get 2 guys in here now, like then they get a year under their belt when you feel like you're back maybe on the table to start competing a little bit better. And they'll kind of have more, they'll be a little further along in their development than other guys that come in. So I think I think about all those things, and I'm starting to like really like the idea of maybe drafting 2 linemen in the first round and then waiting on wide receiver and seeing what's there. Because if that plays out and you end up with like Omar Cooper in the second round, I'm okay with that. If that plays out, and I think Denzel Boston's probably going to go in the first, but maybe he slips and you can get him in the early second round. You have to trade up or something. Like I'm okay with that. I like some of those guys near the top of the second round too, where it's like maybe you do wait. So we can talk about that some more, but that's kind of an initial thought of where my head's at in terms of like the big needs this team has.
Yeah, definitely. Spence, what are the vibes like at the combine? We talked all Browns. You're out there, you're out in Indy, you're floating around. What's going on? What's going on boots on the ground in Indianapolis?
I mean, I don't know. It doesn't feel like there's like last year, I feel like there was like bigger storylines, especially like around quarterbacks. Like when we were here last year, the Matthew Stafford thing kind of came out that like, he was like maybe considering getting traded or whatever. There was, I mean, Sam Darnold was obviously part of the conversation. There was more. Quarterbacks always drive the conversation. And so, I find it interesting that there's just not as much buzz this year. Like there's a little bit around like Kyler and what's going to happen with him and who's going to be in on Malik Willis. And that market sort of is starting to develop, it sounds like.
It's like you go from Stafford and Shador Sanders and Cam Ward last year to Malik Willis is the name that's floating around on a team, and the top draft picks Fernando Mendoza, and he's like, there's no story there. He's going to the Raiders. Like, the draft starts with the New York Jets.
Well, and it's like it's Tua. It's like these random names that people are kind of like whatever. I mean, I will say like it does sound like the Browns are. From a Browns lens, like there's been some sort of, I think, chatter that like they are sort of calling around about potentially trading for a wide receiver, which that's the Andrew Berry special, so no surprise there. But who it is kind of remains to be seen. But I think that's maybe an option for them as well, and that's something that we can talk about in a future episode too, because maybe if they address wide receiver via a trade, they aren't feeling like they got to draft one either. So
I heard an interesting name the other day, which I'm not going to say it because I don't think there's any truth to it. But if it was, it would be cool if one of those happened. But we'll see, man. It's going to get fun here, as the week progresses. And who's tomorrow? Who's talking to the media tomorrow? Because it was defensive ends and defensive backs today, right? Or
tomorrow is defensive backs are tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
So I actually do want to. I'm going to try to get some Caleb Downs sound. We'll see what he has to say because obviously he's somebody that could be in play. And then Friday's a big one because you get quarterbacks and you get
Yeah.
wide receivers.
Yeah.
So I'm not staying for the linemen, unfortunately, on Saturday. So
He said draft them all, but he can't give them the time, man. It's sad. Yeah, it's sad.
People have lives they got to get back to at some point. So, you know. All right. Well, we appreciate you hanging out with us per usual. We're going to drop another episode likely tomorrow, or we're going to at least record another episode tomorrow. So make sure you stay tuned for that. That one will be more like prospect driven. So talking about different players, different guys you like, all those things. But in the meantime, make sure you use that QR code. Head on over to Browns Roundtable. Subscribe to the channel. Join the community space. Whatever you feel. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Browns Roundtable on YouTube. You can find more content like this. Press conferences. I got the pressers up from Barry and Monken. I almost said Stefanski. And I'll have some prospects and things up there for you as well. So we
Is it weird? Is it weird seeing Kevin in Falcons gear?
Oh, we talked to him. It was really weird because the weirdest thing, talk about being weird. It was all like no. It felt like no Atlanta people were asking him any questions.
Really?
It
Was just all.
It was just like the Cleveland media all came over to like hear what he was going to say, and then it was all us just asking him questions, and the Atlanta media was just kind of like, okay. They asked like maybe five questions.
We'll let those lunatics run with it.
Pretty much. That's pretty much how it went. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk some more fun stuff from the combine and much more with you on Thursday. In the meantime, keep on following along with all things Cleveland Browns with BrownsRoundtable.com.